All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at something absolutely fascinating. We're going to explore how a simple 5-day third-grade math simulation, about baking cupcakes, is actually a total masterclass in high-level decision-making in human psychology. It's built around a curriculum called the bakery, and trust me, it doesn't just teach arithmetic. It literally teaches students how to recognize the mental shortcuts our brains take every single day. Those sneaky shortcuts that so often lead us completely astray.
Which brings up a really tough question, right? How exactly do you teach 8-year-olds about cognitive biases? Think about it. If you just stand at the front of a room and lecture a bunch of third graders about, say, overproduction bias or anchoring bias, you are going to lose them in exactly 30 seconds. It's just way too abstract. So instead of boring them with a lecture, this simulation does something brilliant. It creates a completely immersive environment where the students actually live through these biases firsthand. And honestly, nothing captures the vibe of this program quite like this quote. The teacher's guide literally opens with this massive promise. You're about to watch your third graders argue about cupcakes and learn more about their own thinking in 5 days than most adults learn in a year. Wow, right? And it works because the simulation itself does the heavy lifting. The simulation does the teaching, and the teacher, well, they just get to sit back and facilitate the beautiful, chaotic fallout.
So to really get how this works, we need to follow the exact chronological arc these students go through. It's this carefully engineered 5-day emotional roller coaster. Check this out. Day 1 is pure, unadulterated excitement. Day 2, that brings their very first taste of real-world anxiety. Day 3 throws in some massive disruption. Day 4 is just intense tension. And Day 5 is the reckoning. We are going to walk through this exact timeline together right now.
Section 1. Cupcakes and cognitive biases.
All right, so heading into the simulation, the whole thing relies on this pretty revolutionary teaching approach. The consequences are the curriculum. The teacher is explicitly told, never rescue your students from bad decisions. So here are the ground rules for the bakery. Each team starts with $200. Baking a batch of cupcakes costs $2, and that yields 6 cupcakes. Sounds super simple, right? But here is the massive catch. Any cupcakes that don't sell, they go stale. That means that the money is gone forever. Poof. And finally, the teacher drops this little seed of information on day 1. Save your money. Why? Because on Friday, a school might just call with a massive order. If you don't have the cash on hand for the ingredients, you can't take the order. The stakes are officially set.
Section 2. Excitement and anxiety.
So here we go. Day 1. This is exactly where all that excitement meets anxiety. And man, the students start falling into their very first psychological traps without even realizing it. So teams have zero sales data to start, right? Just a basic customer survey. And almost instantly, they fall into what the simulation calls the favorite trap, or, as behavioral scientists call it, preference bias. A student will just blurt out, "Oh, I love chocolate, let's bake all chocolate." They completely confuse what they like with what the market actually buys. They'll straight up ignore the survey showing high demand for vanilla or strawberry and just max out their batches on chocolate. And the teacher? The teacher doesn't correct them at all. They just let the trap snap shut, knowing full well that tomorrow's cold, hard data is going to do all the teaching. Then we hit day 2 and boom, the first major crisis. The teacher announces that a competitor has opened up down the street and they're selling cupcakes for just $1. The teams absolutely panic. Suddenly, they face this huge choice. Do they make what we'll call the boring choice and keep their price at $2? Let's do the math. A batch costs $2 for 6, so each cupcake costs about 33 cents to make. At $2, they profit $1.67 per cake. Not bad. Or do they fall into the exciting trap? Do they panic, slash their price to $1 just to beat the competitor, and absolutely tank their profit to just 67 cents? Now, what's genuinely fascinating here is the psychology driving that panic. Seriously, have you ever seen this happen with competitor pricing in a real-world boardroom? The simulation calls this the price trick, but in behavioral science, we know it as anchoring bias. That competitor's $1 price tag, it becomes an anchor in the 8-year-old's brain. It feels like a hard rule. They just immediately copy their rival's price without even stopping to check their own math to see if they can afford to sell them that cheaply. It's wild to watch.
But wait, it gets worse, because the sheer anxiety of day 2 triggers a second major trap, more is better thinking, otherwise known as overproduction bias. Totally panicked by this new competitor, teams decide to bake extra cupcakes just in case, and they do this without actually checking how many they sold on day 1. Their brain just screams more is safer. But remember the rules? Unsold cupcakes go stale. So now they take a massive double hit to their budget, they lowered their prices, and they baked a ton of cupcakes that absolutely nobody bought.
Section 3. The flavor flop.
Okay, moving on to day 3. This brings the highest conflict of the entire simulation. It really tests whether these kids can adapt to rapidly changing information. So the teacher drops a bomb. A local food blogger just declared strawberry the best cupcake in town. Plus, it's hot outside and people just don't want heavy chocolate anymore. Suddenly, strawberry demand surges to 20 while chocolate plummets down to 8. Now, some teams look at this new data, they pivot, they capture the surge, and they make a massive profit. But other teams, they absolutely refuse to adapt.
Instead, they fall victim to yesterday thinking, which is also known as recency bias. You will literally hear students argue, but chocolate always sells, and always is the dead giveaway word here. Their brains are desperately clinging to a comforting habit because, well, it worked on days 1 and 2. They completely ignore today's clear-cut data because yesterday's success just feels so much safer.
And honestly, this perfectly tees up the next bias, the loud voice problem, better known as groupthink. Under the intense pressure of this shifting market, teams inevitably start arguing. And here's the tragic part. Often the specific student who was assigned the role of sales tracker has the actual data sitting right in front of them, but they're quiet. So instead of listening to the numbers, the team goes with the loudest, most confident voice in the room who's just yelling to stick with chocolate. The data gets completely ignored, and their precious budget is wasted on a mountain of stale chocolate cupcakes.
Section 4. The budget reckoning.
By day 4, the consequences of those first 3 days are really catching up with them. Tension is absolutely at an all-time high when the teacher announces that the big order has finally arrived. Maplewood School wants 100 cupcakes and they are willing to pay a massive $150 for them. But there is a catch. Teams must have exactly $34 saved up in their budget just to buy the ingredients. If you don't have the $34, you lose the order. Simple as that. On top of this, the teacher casually announces that day 4 is going to be a very slow day for foot traffic. So now, teams have to make a really hard choice.
So the absolutely crucial point here is watching how the teams with low budgets handle this pressure. Spoilers, they fall straight into wishful thinking, or optimism bias. Instead of actually running the numbers, a student will say something like, well, hopefully we'll sell enough today to make our money back. And there it is. The word hopefully is the giant red flashing signal. They are hoping instead of planning. They want to bake at full speed today, completely ignoring the fact that they are spending the exact money they desperately need to save for tomorrow.
So they face the ultimate choice. Do they go for the exciting trap? Baking at full speed, just hoping against all odds that they'll somehow sell out on a slow day? Or do they make the boring choice? Do they sit down, do the math, bake significantly less, and ensure they protect that $34 baseline? If they choose the exciting trap, they might spend their budget down to $20, which completely disqualifies them from that massive Friday payout.
Section 5. The boring choice wins.
Finally, Friday arrives, the reckoning. This is where the simulation delivers its ultimate payload. It's the emotional peak of the whole week, and it's exactly where the students finally realize what they've been doing. The teacher asks the budget managers to open their ledgers. Any team with $34 or more, they get to fill the big order. They spend their $34, collect the $150, and instantly net a massive $116 profit in a single transaction. And the teams that didn't save? Oh man, they just have to sit there and watch that money literally walk right out the door. And the teacher still doesn't comfort them. Because that horrible feeling of missing the order, that is the lesson.
Then we get the big reveal. The teacher finally puts a name to the 6 cognitive traps we've been talking about. Because of this brilliant discovery-first design, the students haven't just learned about the traps, they've actually lived the consequences. So when the teacher says, hey, raise your hand if you baked chocolate on day 1 just because you liked it, well, that's called the favorite trap, the kids instantly recognize their own behavior. It clicks. And here's the absolute best part. They are graded purely on their written reflections and reasoning, never on their final profit. A team that lost all their money but deeply understands why it happened, they get a way better grade than a team that just got lucky.
And honestly, the final profit margins tell the whole story anyway. The boring, data-based, math-checking teams, they finish the week with profits anywhere from $180 to well over $250. Meanwhile, the exciting, feeling-based teams finish with maybe $30 to $80. The boring choice completely obliterates the feeling-based decisions, like it is not even close. Math beats momentum, every single time.
Which leaves us with this final lingering thought. Think about it. If an 8-year-old can learn to recognize their own recency bias, groupthink, and optimism bias simply by running a simulated cupcake bakery for 5 days, what kind of decision habits could we, as full-grown adults, build in our own lives, our businesses, and our careers if we just took a moment to stop following our feelings and actually checked our own math?